Dun, 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 dun. We're here for another 100
There we go.
minutes.
Hey, I am not Scott. Scott's not here quite yet. I'm Randall, and that's Simon over there.
Yeah. Randall's over here. This is like Rick. It's always like mirrored, right? Like, yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Like
Right.
Points the other direction. Yes. Hi, Simon.
We're going to quickly. Yeah. Hello. Good morning. Good morning for you. Good afternoon for me. There you go.
Right. Yes.
We're going to we quickly go through like the do's and don'ts and things so we can crack on. So be nice, respectful, and constructive whilst interacting with the YouTube chat. This is not Reddit. Don't post anything adult rude or offensive. No advertising or promotion of any kind. No spamming. Don't post the same thing again and again. Your question goes to the bottom of the list. If you've posted a new question, it's the same. It's just the way it goes. And no harassment is tolerated, and you'll be banned from here. And funny enough, other places as well. So just you've been warned. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader and CTO at DevAngels London. And you can follow me on Twitter at DevAngels London. Randall.
Hi, I'm Randall Schwartz. I've been in the computer industry for 45 years. I've been a GDE in the area of Dart and Flutter for about 5 years since the beginning of the program for that. And I'm also a full-time Flutter developer. And
we have Scott. Hey, Scott.
Oh, there's Scott.
Hello.
Just in time.
I made it. I am Scott Stahl. I am a community leader, so they tell me. Co-organizer of GDG Cleveland, code slave at DevAngels London, and a few other things you really don't care about.
So, let's see if we can.
So I just want to, before we get started there, we are getting started. I just want to say, get your questions in early. We'll make sure we answer them. We answer them mostly in the order they're received. Put you in front in the live chat, and I will pick up on that and add that to the queue.
Now, also, Randall, if we re-receive a question, then it goes in the order that it was re-received. In other words,
you missed
bottom.
it. You missed it.
He already said that. He already said that.
They're taking my job.
Yeah, we had to. You weren't here.
Well, you weren't here. You weren't here.
A dog needed.
Show
empty.
must go
What can I
on.
tell you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the dog must go out. So.
Yeah.
Right.
You have your priorities. We understand.
So, okay. We'll just crack on. I actually talking about this. I wanted to share something with everyone since we let the questions come in for a second. So I'm going to share the screen. Hopefully, if this works. Let's find out. Share.
Somebody says I should drink. I'm drinking.
Yes.
Here we go. So this is your normal Flutter documentation. We do mention this in quite a few places. You can go to master-api.flutter.dev, and when you're here, what's this? Is this new? Is this all new? We have a new search. Is this right? So yeah, we now actually have look. Oh, fancy new search. Oh, lots of links. Oh, new. Oh, what's this? WASM? Oh, look at this. So this is the documentation based off of the master end of the repo. So this also they've grouped them up differently and some other interesting things. There's all the inbuilt packages now in here as well. So yeah, you can go find everything in one place. So this might actually be handy for those that are using the Flutter right now, of course. But there's no guarantee that what you're going to read in the documentation is how it is going to be inside inside your app right now, unless you're using the master branch. So you have been warned. But it's interesting. I've noticed there's a bunch more links and various other improvements that have been made to the documentation. So
Simon, can you link to that in the chat room?
I can indeed. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We do actually bring up the banner at the end of the stream as always. There we go. And that's in the live stream, so you should be able to get that link. But yeah.
Awesome.
There you go. That's why I mentioned it. I came across it this week and we lost the Scott. But
already.
I don't know what's happened there. Anyway, so yeah, I just came across it earlier this week. I was like, oh, it's different. Oh, the search box looks different. What's happening?
Cool.
Because I noticed, I did notice that there was been a delay in loading the documentation. Like you click on a search in the current if you go to api.flutter.dev and like click on like a search result, it takes a while for it to load for some reason.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Anyway,
do you think they've updated? Do you think they've updated Future Provider already? We can get into that a little later.
We definitely want to cover that in a bit. So
yeah, we have a topic today. Those of us that are on the show, we actually have a for later.
All three of us who are on the show, yes.
Yes. Oh, there's Simon. Or there's Scott again.
Sorry. Should we dive straight into some questions?
Yeah, we got a few.
Which architecture is the best for developing mobile apps?
React Native. I am noticing a trend. Well, not so much architecture as organizational structure.
Yes.
I am noticing that people are beginning to coalesce and gel on the idea of packaging by feature, not type. Now, which actual architecture you're going to try to use within that, that's up to you entirely. The old ones don't really fit perfectly. They're like a shoe that's a half size too large or too small. But the main thing to focus on is something that's going to handle reactivity well, and that is going to keep your state separate from your UI and keep your logic separate from your UI, and have lots and lots of downloads on the stores and make you money.
I will say that I have noticed a consistency in people who are touting MVVM because they're coming from some other environment where you have to have the intermediate view model and then wire up the bindings for it. You don't need to do that in Flutter. And it adds an extra layer, and it gives you incentive to put model data where it doesn't belong, which is in the view. Because then people go, well, I went to a different page and I came back and all my data was gone. Well, yeah, because your data is local to the view. I prefer classic, old, ancient archetype of MVC as my way of thinking about where to put things. So just passing that along as someone who's done a lot of coding with GUIs and object-oriented code.
And Hamza, MVVM is model view view model.
You can go just type in Google, you'll get uploads of these things. I'm going to share just quickly. This Andre Pizzotto did a thread, and I've posted it in the chat of this entire sort of topic. Feature first versus layer first, and he goes through reasons and diagrams and explanations. So it's kind of like he
also talks about it some on the Flying High with Flutter podcast that he did for his courses, which I was listening to this morning.
Right. So anyway, but yeah, architecture, I could be facetious and say ARM, which architecture is best on developing mobile apps, ARM. But no, whichever works for your app. There's definitely the need to have by feature, but then obviously feature doesn't mean, per screen, right? It can be, a feature can be auth, it can be, I don't know, like a domain layer or something like that. You could break up however you want. But the point here is if you end up whenever you're editing your code, you want your files and your structures to be grouped into how you're going to frequently edit them together, right? So if you've got a block and you've got screen, you've got all this together, you normally want them next to each other just so it's easier for you to navigate between them and work with them. But however you want.
And it can get a little bit strange because sometimes people will put the screens in a folder separate from the other things. And there's two layers of widget folders when you do this. There are the widgets that are used across the app, which is a widgets folder that's not in any feature. But then there are also widgets that are unique to a specific feature, and those are kept within a widgets folder within that feature folder. It might sound a little confusing at first, but basically, widgets you use more than one place, lift them up into a higher folder. If it's only used in one place, keep it there.
This is kind of just good sort of object-oriented programming, but you always break something down and sort of get rid of code replication, right? Do not repeat yourself, dry, right? But also that kind of brings about lifting your state up, right? So if you want to use something further down multiple layers, you lift it up a layer. therefore it makes sense. It kind of comes down, right? And you just keep doing that. So if something's completely global to your app, it should be the very top layer of your hierarchy. Then normally there's the top layer of your file hierarchy as well. That's why you normally put your main entry point at the very beginning, right? At the very top layer. Right. Let's get to the next question.
One other thing real quick here. There's something, it's not marked with a Q, but it's very timely, and I think it's important for beginner and intermediate people. Okay. MVC is not an architecture, but a design pattern. No, MVC is an architecture. And it's kind of, well, I mean, I'm thinking design pattern is state pattern, composite.
Okay,
pattern.
what is it? What is an architecture?
This is quibbling over semantic definitions. It doesn't matter. MVC is something you should look at. That's all we're saying. That's all I'm saying.
MVC is a way of organizing and a strategy, but a pattern is a specific way to solve a common problem.
Okay.
Right?
Well, but MVC is a pattern in that sense because it's, well, where do I put my data? Where do I put the connection between my view and my data? So
guys,
it does
unless we're selling popcorn for this show so that people can watch the fight.
That's why I said you're quibbling. Look at it. Look at that.
And Christian,
pattern.
you know to put a Q
thing
on your question.
Yeah, please. That's the only way. I'm very trained when I do this show, so I want to make sure.
What is the biggest advantage of using Flutter?
There's
code reusage.
I mean, it's not even. I mean, code reusage is nice, right? But it's not just. It's definitely one of the biggest advantages, but it's not.
Hot reload. That's
but I mean, it's easier to use than Xcode or Android development.
Yes.
It puts app creation within reach of people who don't know a whole lot about front end. I have seen .NET people who look at it as a way to finally be able to do some front end.
I'll be honest with you.
Me.
Even doing
mobile first with Flutter. So,
but to be honest, like I've been doing mobile development for a long time, right? And for all that time, you know, you talk about like Flutter, and it's just it answered so many of the problems I was having with mobile development over that entire period, and it's like
no, that period being for example, 10
like,
years.
I mean, like is it more than it might even be more than that? It's 12. I know 2008. I don't know whenever that was. 14 years? Is that 40? Has it been 14 already?
Cupcake. Yeah, you were doing.
Oh,
you were doing 10 years before.
No, don't no. La.
Anyway,
so
I would call him an old guy, but
the point here is I tried to do some C++ code the other day. Well, I was doing it, but I completely forgot that whole like remit of like just go out and rebuild and like, you know, have to restart from scratch. Like hot reload and hot restart is just such a huge revelation. Like it is just makes a complete difference to programming. The speed at which you can develop is just huge, especially when it's not just like you're not just hot reloading data, right? In state, you're keeping that around. You're changing the code itself, right? You press a button. Okay, didn't run the right function. Okay, change that function. Press the save. Press the button again. Okay, it's fixed. It's like there's no other development environment that can offer you that. Like even web, it doesn't work that way. You know,
it's like magic. It's just very cool. Yeah. It took a lot of work. I was chatting with somebody in Discord a couple days ago about the hot reload. Looks like hotel load or whatever, but hot reload package in the pub allows you to hot reload Dart applications. So theoretically, you could have a ongoing shelf server, say, as a microservice somewhere, and then you could just change the source code to it, and it would reload itself. I thought that.
So So I've done that in the last two Dart server projects where there's a hot reloader, use the hot reloader package just to restart the listening service, and
I'm getting prodded in Slack for an answer on this one. Thank you, Aikish. Apparently somebody's not working on the project, Simon, so beware of that. See if he's billing for hours right now. Anyway, Akish is one of the guys we work with, and he's saying that composition is one of the biggest advantages of Flutter because it finally allows him to visualize and conceptualize what's going on, because with the composition pattern that Flutter's using, it's a bunch of Lego blocks.
Yeah. I mean, that's not like, it's not just unique to Flutter, but yeah, no, it's definitely good.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on.
Right. How to micro benchmark the widget tree creation process. Well,
talking about something like the performance suite.
Yeah.
I mean, just like any micro benchmark, I suppose you still need to use the UI widget test. It's difficult. You have got the ability to, I'm trying to remember what it is now. The Dart Dev package is the fundamental part. You can use a stopwatch, which actually does a really high resolution timer.
Right.
And that means you can really do sort of benchmarking, and you would have to do widget creation over and over again. So you can use that with the test widget infrastructure to rebuild an entire new tree, and you can run the same thing over and over again and get like a round of 10,000 widget creations and see what the benchmark provides and sort of get some accuracy of measurement. But yeah, whatever. That's not very helpful, I'm afraid. But I've never had to do micro benchmarking of widget creation. The profile, running your app in profile mode will give you a lot of information about widget creation, and that'll actually give you the debug mode. You'll get like the number of times a widget's been built, and that normally gives you the information you need to work out where in your tree that you might be building too much or you might be doing something wrong. Anything else to add, anyone?
No. Profile.
Anton, what is the right and good way to build responsive UI with Flutter? Consider all iOS notches and cutouts and so on. What is the right and good way to build? I mean, that's already taken into account. So media query will give you that information, right? It gives you the information on the cutouts and where the insets are and how to use them. In fact, it also works on foldable devices. It gives you where the hinges and stuff like that. So you can obviously just build a widget that, doesn't place widgets there or wraps widget around it. I mean, there's no
safe area that's already provided. Safe area gives you that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Safe area widget gives. I mean,
and it's not necessary to have safe area with the scaffold, though, right?
Yeah. Well, scaffold literally uses safe area, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it does some custom stuff. But So the widget we're talking about, let me just. It's safe area, and and it the sliver safe area as well, but it basically just reads the you can tell it what you want it to pad into on the left, top, bottom, right, and so on. There's several ways of doing this, and in fact, there's ways of doing this with the keyboard as well, so that you can have like the UI like squish up when the keyboard comes up or overlap on top, and you can do all this kind of fun stuff. It depends on your application or what screen you're on, and like how you want to do it.
Right.
The other thing is scaffold. Yeah, and I was going to say the other thing is scaffold does this for you. So just check a scaffold in, and it will handle the notches and everything for you. And it actually makes the menu go behind, and it will make the pad in the bottom of the content if you want to. You get that sort of handled for you. So scaffold.
I think
it's material design.
I think there's a separate aspect to this question too that I think we probably should address, and one that is. Do not make your widgets proportional to the width of your screen.
There is that. Yeah.
Use the rows and columns and the other flex widgets to do your layout. Then use Layout Builder above that to be able to choose whether you're going to be one column or two columns or three columns or whatever, the cut points for those. But that's really what you should be doing. Don't use a package. Especially don't use a package that changes the font size based on the width, please. Oh my God. And there's people keep bringing these up.
Something like that doing out there.
they keep bringing this up at me in Discord, and they go, how's this? And I go, no, you don't want to change the font size based on the width. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and I'm looking at this question, realize it's two questions, really. How do you handle the notches, cutouts, and etc.? And that's a safe area. But how to handle responsiveness, one of the things we've been doing as well is you design all of your individual UI elements with no sizes. And what you do is you send down constraints. Basically, you make a sized box that you drop your widget into. And that sized box is what's going to give it the constraints for the size it needs to be for whatever situation it's in. So you can use the same user icon with the frame and maybe gold gilding and all this around it, and you don't make it a size. You might make it an aspect ratio of 1 to make it square. But in the meantime, you just let the parent handle it. So, and then the parent handling it is going to be, as Randall said, based possibly on Layout Builder or on things like expandeds.
Yes.
I was just like hunting it down. There's actually a great video just around this point, not about responsive design, but about the notches and so on. Padding, and view insets, decoding Flutter. It's a decoding Flutter video on the Flutter channel, which explains this in detail and shows some nice diagrams. So I've posted that in the channel. You can watch it later. That should give you a bit more information. Let's move on. Roa. Hey, welcome. What do you recommend for database solution with Dart, with a Dart backend? Me personally, I mean, I've been enjoying Postgres recently. There's great packages for Postgres in Dart, lots of compatibility, and Postgres itself is a very well structured and known database, and you can use it as an object store. It has support for JSON-B as a column type, so you get the benefit of what you get from Firestore and so on, but also get the possibility of using relational data as well, so you kind of get the best of both worlds.
And if you want Postgres plus a good working set of tools, look at Supabase, which has a completely open source model. They make money by hosting the stuff if you want, but you can take it all on-prem and just host it all yourself. But that's Postgres and real-time access and GraphQL and a bunch of other really, really cool services, all from the Supabase people.
I mean, it depends on what level you're going to, because I wouldn't recommend someone use Postgres if you weren't building like a large service. If you're just doing like a small app or something, use something like Supabase, something that's already there, already set up, already working, right?
And then there's, what was that one? I feel terrible. I can't remember the name of the one the gentleman came on. The show. That was it. What?
ISAR. ISAR.
ISAR.
But that's a client. That's a client side in memory database. It's not really meant for the back end, especially at scale. You're not going to be able to. It doesn't scale over multiple nodes. And,
and I imagine a lot of people are wondering why we haven't mentioned Firebase, which is.
No,
it's a valid option.
Well, it is and it isn't. Not for Dart on the back end, right? So for Dart on the back end, there's no Dart only Firestore solution, right? That's the problem, right? So you have to use so at the moment when you build an app, it uses the Android SDK or the iOS SDK or the iOS/Mac SDK, right, for connecting to Firestore. Now there is a Google APIs package for Firebase, but it doesn't support everything. It's not set up in the same way that you expect to use Firestore, and it doesn't authenticate the same. Like there's a bunch of other changes. So it's like there's no solution really for using Firestore on the server side. If there was, I think there'd be a huge different market here, right? In terms of people, a lot more people would be using Firebase on the back end. But without that Dart only package, it's not going to happen. Anyway, we have a guest here.
Yeah, there's a Viking apparently on vacation.
Ooh. Hey, there he is.
Oh, Scott.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome, Majid. How you doing?
I'm good. A bit tired, but good generally.
You've been
so you finally woke up after sleeping for a week?
No.
Majid's been going non-stop. I've been seeing pictures of him flying planes everywhere and all sorts.
Yeah, sure. It's crazy these days. But how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
I
Not too
just
bad.
came by and to give you some news and updates, So there are a few things that we are cooking for community. So I thought that maybe I can also talk about it.
Go for it.
Please
your
do.
update.
And one thing, all of us in this show probably, and everyone who is watching us knows that October is coming, and October is usually a hack time for people, community people. So we're going to have Hacktoberfest. And well, in Flutter community like us, we thought about how to make it a little bit more engaging and more attractive. So we started to planning a program for that. So named Hacktoberfest, Flutter Community Hacktoberfest. So more update will come tomorrow morning, or tomorrow, morning my time. It will be probably sometime your time. But tomorrow you will receive a few updates, probably in different channels, Reddit, Twitter, and so on and so forth. So a few companies also Flutter Community, default on the show right now, and Invertase, AdSign, AWS Amplify, Pusher, and a few more, which I will reveal tomorrow, has joined this program to provide a big swag box. So far, I can tell you, I actually have the page right now in front of me. I can read from that. We have a very special swag box for in Flutter community with the link that we provide tomorrow. You will receive some issues that have a special tag and says Hacktoberfest-special. If anyone send only even one PR and get it merged, only one, they will receive Dash, Zappy, Google Home, Flutter Vikings rubber duck, a Flutter mug, T-shirt, a sticker pack, and maybe a voucher. So that's a lot.
Scott's like, so where'd you sign me up?
Okay, wait. You get one of those things or all of those things?
All of them.
Wow.
And we have then other issues with Hacktoberfest, tag, repos that have that tag. If anyone send 10 PRs and get it merged, they will receive all of them again, except Dash and the voucher. And then if you send 5 to 10 PR, you get again all of them except a few more less, for sure.
See, now what's happening, folks, is Majid has a bunch of rubber ducks to get rid of.
Yeah.
But it's also Google Home. I'm going to give away big Google Homes. So it's a precious prize, I guess, for PRs. And then even if you send one PR to any of these repositories, especially Flutter community packages, we have Plus plugins and a bunch of other repositories that today I put Hacktoberfest tag on them, so you can find them simply on Flutter community. So if you just send even one PR and get it merged, you still receive a T-shirt, a Flutter T-shirts, the one that Scott has in all of the interviews, not this other one.
The Vikings one.
The Vikings one. And also sticker pack. So at least one PR, which is simple, isn't it? And the good thing here is that this is on top of the price that you get from DigitalOcean. So this is an extra one. So all of those PRs that you get merged and everything, it will count also in DigitalOcean, campaign. So you receive the T-shirt and etc. So this is on top of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
in other words, someone doesn't have enough storage room. Someone doesn't want to pay for storage.
There was a point just before Flutter Vikings. I swear, we're gonna get an emergency phone call. Get me out of here! Where all the boxes are falling down on top of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
You folks should have seen the boxes and boxes and boxes.
Just talking about, you mentioned the interviews, and just to say, the first 2 interviews are up online right now. So interview with Arthur Thompson and Frank Puff and Remy. and we'll be and tell us, Majid, we're going to be releasing more of those interviews as we go.
Yes, we have. Scott was a great interviewer. I think he was just capturing everyone in the venue. You have to talk to me right now. I remember that. So we made a lot of good interviews and funny ones, and also like good ones. So all of them are ready, uploaded, and just scheduled. Every day you will receive one, and also the talks are ready. I started uploading them slowly. Every day, hopefully, you will receive one video. It will be either an interview or a talk. So hopefully by the next 3 weeks, we will upload everything. So every day, then you have one thing to watch. I think me and Simon at least decided not to upload everything at once, because then it will be a lot of things and you forget about it. But every day you have one small things to watch, which is nice.
Yep. Also, go back and watch the Flutter Vikings special for Hump Day. There aren't a whole lot of questions being answered, but it's a chance to see what happens when you take about, what do you guys think, 40% of the Flutter community goofballs and put them in one place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically, imagine getting a couch and cycling people in and out with Majid and Puff, Simon, me, Philip, Craig LeBenz from the Flutter team, Thomas Burkhart, Anna Lushenko. Who else?
Many.
My brain is blank. There were so many people.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch as a non-participant, so it was really nice. So go check that out. Yes.
Yeah, it just for the entertainment value of the silliness at times, we had a good time. We really did.
Oh, you're muted, Simon.
No. I was saying we got hard stop at the end of the hour, so we need to crack back on the questions if we're going to get through them.
Yes.
So
sorry for
no problem.
No.
Thank you so much for dropping by, and thank you for the update. Hacktoberfest. We'll speak to you soon. Ciao. So, questions. Let's jump on. Anton says, any plans to fix DevTools? I know they're built with Flutter, but they're so slow to do anything, and that memory tab, no way to find leaks, really. Interesting. To be honest, I don't actually use the separate Dart Dev Tools. I always use the ones that are built into the IDE interface. So, yeah, I mean, if you guys experience any of this stuff, I think, is that just a browser thing? Or do you think it's... Yeah. No answer, nothing.
I've never felt them to be too slow. What's too slow?
It could just be... because it's built into your browser, it might be worth just experimenting by opening the DevTools up in a completely separate browser session. The other one is maybe just shut down all Chrome apart from that and just see how that reacts as well. Because maybe it's just like Chrome itself eats up a lot of resources. So it could just be like a performance thing on your machine rather than the actual tools themselves. Because when you're looking at those kind of memory tabs and things like that, there's a lot of data coming through trying to be processed. Development itself is one of those things that sadly requires a very powerful machine most of the time, because you're doing like, not are you just running the app that you're building, but you may be running it multiple times, you're running different things, you're running emulators. There's a lot going on that is normally a power user kind of thing for a computer to do. So yeah, you end up having to have quite a good computer. You can do development on any computer, but it's just, you want to do it with any sort of performance and everything. You end up having to get the hardware. So yeah, I'll just check out your system. The other thing is just monitor your system, right? System resources and so on, and see if there's anything that's bottlenecking. Because I tell you something else, most people don't realize a normal hard drive bottlenecks your performance of your CPU greatly. When switching to an SSD will make a big difference.
I had my work laptop used to take 2 minutes to boot. I switched to an SSD, it booted in 10 seconds. Not kidding. Of course, the old drive was a 5,400 RPM. So,
Mtho? She says Mtho or myth. Yeah, whatever. In Dart, is it possible to generate separate unique lists based on items in another list at runtime?
Wow, what does that mean?
List from?
Hang on. Is it possible to generate separate unique lists based on items in another? Yes. I mean, just make separate lists.
I don't understand this.
You need
question.
an algorithm to decide what to put in the new list based on the old list. But
yeah, exactly, right. And you, if you're talking about, like you said, unique lists, I mean, that's how you compare each list item, right? To know which list it should go into, perhaps. But you're just talking about filtering, and you can just filter. You can just do a map and like you can do a where. You can just do list.where and then give it a conditional, and then you can do all that and only accept it to multiple. I don't.
This is unanswerable. Let's move on to ones we can answer.
Well, but one thing to know too. This sounds like somebody who hasn't worked with Dart lists a whole lot. One thing to be aware of: you can declare a list as final and change the contents of it all day long. The list itself is what's final, not the contents. So, and if you're doing comparisons and such, you need to keep in mind that the list itself is a completely separate object from what's in it.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a list immutability, there's several packages, and we go through them last week and the week before and the week before that. So we're going to skip that right now. But there's several immutable collections and separate packages. Fast immutable lists, I think, is one, and KT Dart. There's a bunch of packages that also help you with that kind of thing. So go check them out.
Fast immutable collections, FIC, not FI.
Yes, that's it. Sorry. Yep. Why aren't Flutter hooks part of the framework? So first of all, I want to be clear. We do not work for the Flutter team.
Yes.
We cannot ask this. Why is it not part of the package? They don't.
They just send us cool shirts.
Yeah. So why aren't Flutter? I couldn't say why not. And also, I can give you the sort of the explanation that we've had over the many years that we've been working with Flutter, and that is, if they were to include hooks in the package, they now have to maintain hooks. Mm-hmm. They now have to manage the hooks. They have to update the hooks. They're adding more work for them to maintain this whole suite of things. When why not have it as a separate package that can be maintained separately by someone else, right?
And there are multiple ways of doing that same thing.
Yeah.
So choosing hooks would say that they believe this is better than other ways, et cetera. And as Simon said,
the other thing is
they don't have a lot of staff.
But I'm also kind of curious as to what makes the difference between Flutter hooks being part of the framework and being outside the framework, because there's zero functional difference for your application.
You have to write an import line.
Yeah, it's like
that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on.
Yep.
Roberto, welcome back. Using packages which using other packages, why can't we access those used packages, such as if I use cache network image with a HTTP package, why do I need to? Okay, so let me explain this. You're talking about transitive dependencies. That's the name for those, right? And you can in fact go import HTTP and it will just work, but it'll give you a warning, because the problem is in this case, if cache network image stopped using a HTTP package, your app would break, right? Because you're depending on their dependency. Right. The whole idea of you declaring a dependency is not to include the code, not just that, but to tell the package system that you need that package for your code to function. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's what it's there for. So yes, you can go include someone else's transitive dependencies without declaring them, and it will function and compile just fine. The problem is that if that other package changes what it uses, you're going to be screwed. So
there is one plus to declaring an intermediate dependency like that, and that is that IntelliSense will expand those. If it won't do it with implicit includes, it'll only do it if you explicitly have it in PubSpec.
Yeah. So you won't get import suggestions for the HTTP package unless it's in your PubSpec.
Yeah. Right. And also at the same time, you get flagged if it's expressly listed, then you'll get flagged to tell you that there's an update available on that where you might not.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I give an example. It's just another remark on this example here. Cache network image. Let's say cache network image update to HTTP package 2, and your code needs HTTP package 1. Suddenly, your code breaks. Right, and that was completely out of your control. Right, like it should be that you're depending on this thing, and then you can solve it. So yeah, you can do it, but you shouldn't. Because it's just bad programming. What about stacked? I have no idea what stacked is, but
that's got a completely different meaning in English.
Yeah. Stacked is one of the choices similar to like provider pod and stuff. It's another state management, but it's also including some things about view models and stuff. So it's kind of a end-to-end sort of thing.
If you like it, use it.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm seeing a lot of questions without a Q.
They've all
I'm trying to get to them. Yeah.
Rando's been told. Don't worry. Right.
Yep.
I have a problem in the project based on Flutter 1.17.0. Google Maps API build API require work properly on iOS. When I navigate, when I go into the Maps page, the whole app crashes.
Using back at 1.17, was Maps even actually properly set up?
No, well, it's not that. The problem here is, Imad, you've got to remember that you can only guarantee compatibility with the latest versions. So if you've got a project based on that, upgrade the project to use, because the Maps API package has been updated to probably depend on a future version. So it's crashing because there's some interdependency. You're saying, why does it crash? Look at the crash log. That tells you why it crashes, right? There'll be a stack trace. There'll be something that gives you a clue as to why it crashed. But it's probably because the Maps stuff requires the latest version, you're using an older version.
And there's a similar issue that I ran into one time professionally with. I was working with another developer who refused to upgrade. And what was happening was the CI/CD would spin up a VM. It would go download the latest version of Flutter. And since this person wasn't upgrading, their code would crash when the CI/CD tried to run tests on it. And they were like, well, I don't understand why it works locally. Well, yeah, but the SDK that you're using is going to require updated code. And in this case, it sounds like possibly the current versions of iOS and Android are going to require something newer than 1.17.
Yeah, you need
Maps anyway.
There's just the first thing you do whenever you have any compatibility problems like this, you update all your packages and you update everything. Make sure you're running the most recent version so you get rid of anyone else's crash bugs. So you know it's a problem that's in your code.
But I have noticed a lot of Android developers are reluctant to do this, and I didn't like to do it either when I was working with Android because package transitive dependencies break.
We've got to keep our questions short here. Go on, Randall.
I'm just saying that I'm seeing 1.17 there. I bet that's Dart 1.17, not Flutter.
No. That's
Flutter 1.17.
Was 1.17. I remember that.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. Sorry.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's really old, right?
Yeah.
There's several reasons why that's going to be couldn't help you.
That was the one where you were using the global positioning on the map, I believe, back then.
Right, Carl Hayes. Hot reload for web targets doesn't seem to work continuously. Relative, yeah, correct. Hot reload doesn't work on web. So it's on the website.
Just hot restart. That's all I get.
So here's the nice thing though. Here's what you can do, right? And that is you can develop your app on desktop, right? Target the desktop, you get hot reload, and then once you're ready, you test it on web, right? So you get your fast development cycles of your UI and whatever you're doing. And it's only when you're trying to try web specific stuff or try it out on the final platform, then you can do that. But for the most part, you can do your entire literally 90% of your app,
more.
all completely on desktop, and don't even worry about web until the very last minute. So
the only time I've run into something that was web specific was when we were dealing with the iframes. Other than that, you can do everything on desktop that you need to do for web. And maybe even the iframes.
I was going to say, but even then, you can probably do something where you just have a placeholder widget. So when it's desktop, you show this widget, you have a button, and it just does open your URL and just launch that URL in your browser, and you can do whatever you need to do there. I don't know. There's options around that you can work around. Anyway,
the other thing is if you're on your VM based application like on desktop. If you need to access something that looks like a DOM, you don't have a DOM, so you have to simulate that. But there are packages for actually doing JavaScript execution and DOM manipulation as if you were in a VM or in a web.
There's a good package called Universal HTML, which lets you do no operations and various other things.
Right.
That can help out with compatibility.
Yep.
The more I learn, the more I know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
How do I resolve the crisis with learning process? Actually, what you've be clear. What you've actually realized is good. What you've got to is the level of an intermediate programmer right there. Yep. Right? To know that you don't know nothing, right? Is actually that you get to a point in the development cycle when you realize this, right? And there's no crisis in the learning process. As a developer, even me, I'm constantly learning. I'm looking at new things. A certain percentage of your time is devoted to just looking at new things, patterns. When you hear something, make a note of it, go reference it later, find some time to keep learning because you need to stay on top. That's all I think. Yeah.
Anya, a big part of what you're seeing is that it's an old saying, the more I know, the more I realize how little I know.
Yeah.
And what in practice, okay, this is having done teaching for a while. Here's what the reality is that you're facing. As a beginner, when you learn something, it creates 2 or 3 questions. Then when you get the answer to one of those, it creates 2 or 3 more. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're trying to find something out, and when you find it out, it's creating more questions, not less. This is normal. It means you're beginning to understand. It's like if you're dealing with the Flutter SDK and you just want to look up column. Well, then you find out about the flex class. And when you look at the flex class, then you learn about the flex parameter. I'm sorry, the flexible. And then you learn about the flex parameter. And it's like, okay, what's this? Well, what's this? Now this thing depends on this. And suddenly you've got all these questions. What's eventually going to happen is you're going to start answering questions and they're not going to create more questions. Okay. And that's when your learning curve stops spreading wider and starts narrowing out. Now it's never going to hit this, but
I was going to say, it's also that effect of what happens is you get this kind of thing happen where, there's this disparate piece of knowledge over here, and there's another piece of knowledge over here. And when you learn this thing in the middle, it connects the dots. You go, you get that aha moment. Like, that makes sense now. You get that kind of, you know what I'm talking about? You get like that aha moment, the eureka moment of going, it now makes sense because you've learned all these separate things, and suddenly something brings them together, or something like that. So
I just wanted to point something out. We have a very sick mind in the audience.
Okay.
Yes. Someone here loves regex.
Yeah.
Regex
is cool. I like regex. I've gotten really good at it, sadly.
All right. I'm afraid we're going to have to cut the questions off. We've got 35 in the queue.
That's why I'm trying to get through this.
We've got 35 in the queue, and we've got 8 minutes left in the planned show.
Let's keep going.
Let's do speed questions. Speed questions.
We're trying to get through them. Yes. There's next question. Go on. Bring it. Go on. You're in charge, Scott. Next question.
All right.
Sorry. I hit something.
Recently had an issue with Flutter testing where I couldn't interact with system dialogues like permissions. Will we have support for testing this in the future?
Okay. You can currently test that. Let me give you an example here. What you're looking for is expressive. I can't remember what it's called. Basically, the standard
Espresso, isn't that you're talking about the one from Android?
Yes. Well, this is the point. So the problem here is he's trying to do UI tests, right? And the UI tests for Flutter interact with the UI widgets for Flutter, not the Android widgets. So when the Android dialog pops up, it's stuck there, right? It's not going to continue. So you need to use the Espresso library, for example, to Espresso. I think it's called Espresso. And that was driving Flutter widgets. Here you go. I'll put this in the chat. This is the one. You use the Espresso library to drive to the native stuff. So you can say press here on the screen or press this dialog button and that kind of stuff from Dart code, right? So it allows you to do those interactions, and you can do that. So yes, you can already do this. Is the answer. Moving on. Where's that? I don't even know where that question was. That the latest question? I don't even know where that question came from.
No, that one accidentally got put up early.
All right. Well, anyway, next. The more I learn, the more I know. Oh, we did that one.
That's the same one.
Right. Yeah.
Next one. What is the easiest solution to navigating through screens on web? I know Navigate 2.0 is technically a solution, but I need a human readable solution. What you're asking for is use Go Router. Go underscore
Yes.
router. It's a package. Go look it up. There, prompt self.
That's and
I really believe
that. Well, one quick thing. The author of it believes Go Router Go is the way to go with this. Some of us use Push because it gives you a more
just go look at Go
old
Router
school stack. And it's there's a lot to it.
There's lots of options, but that's what Navigate 2 gives you options, and Go Router exposes those quite well. Right. Imad.
I really believe on Flutter Web, but I hope the Flutter Dev Team to innovate on Flutter Web. Could you accept what I missed? I don't understand the question. Yeah, I understand you really believe in it and that you want them to innovate on it.
We're not Flutter team, so I'm not sure we can do anything.
I'm not sure what you got, so I don't know what you missed, and I'm not sure what you mean by what you missed. What are your thoughts on the latest Flutter book, Real World Flutter?
So that's by Ray Wenderlich. They've just released the book, Real World Flutter by Tutorials. And I haven't personally. I'll put the link in the chat here, and I'll bring it up on the stream. So we're just sort of this Real World Flutter.
Is that okay? I knew they were releasing the Apprentice too. So, I didn't know they were coming out with this as well.
So I've not seen it. It looks interesting. The content actually looks really good. So set repository pattern, managing qubits and block, validating complex states, user authentication, routing, navigation, deep link, internationalization, theming.
Wow.
Like this automated testing. They've got a real good selection of content here. So yeah, I mean, go for it. If you like it, grab it, buy it.
Yep.
Support the community.
That's only going to be outdated in 4 months instead of the usual 2 months. That's not bad.
The thing is, if you buy it online, Ray Wenderlich will do updates on the book for you. So that's the best thing to do.
That's
what is the limitation? What are the limitations of protocol buffers and when to use protobuf? Sorry, on REST. There's no limitations as far as I understand on protocol buffers. Like you can send any data you like, including raw packets of data, right? In fact, they're a lot easier to use for the most part, right? Because anything you do with a REST protocol is text-based, right? For the most part, most of your stuff that you're doing with REST is going to be a text-based protocol, which means any data you're sending is going to be encoded. So you get a better performance out of protocol buffers. However, because they're a binary protocol, because they're not standard, they're not as standardized, should we say, as REST, they can be a lot harder to develop with and understand for a lot of developers. And because of the nature of converting your source code that defines your protocol buffers, using the protobuf tool into Dart source code or vice versa, that can add an extra layer of complexity. But it depends on your application. To be honest, for the most part, REST is going to do you just fine. It's only in maybe high performance applications or very large API applications where you need to use protocol buffers. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about them. With web apps getting ever more popular and useful, have you seen a reduction in demand for proper apps? No.
Nope.
So
what we have seen is people who want those same web apps on other platforms as well, not instead of.
Yeah, it's a growth issue. So there's a group of people that, for the most part, don't want to install an app on their phone. It used to be like the case of I want to install lots of apps on my phone. Now there's a point of I want to try something out on web, and then I want to install the app. Right. So for the most part, there's a web app experience with like an installation prompt to install the app. And actually what you're doing is not installing the web app, but you actually get taken to the Play Store to install the same application, but essentially through your like there's missing features on the web app, and you get those features when you're installing it as an actual app, things like that. But no, I don't see it the other way around. We've not been seeing that at all. What is a mixin and where can we use it? Where can you use it? A mixin is, in fact, someone actually asked a question, which I did star, but I can't see it. Here we are. Is multiple inheritance possible in Flutter? This is the same answer. Mixin is the answer to that. So it's called the diamond. You can go look up is it called the diamond problem? The
multiple inheritance diamond problem.
Diamond problem.
Yes.
multiple inheritance, the diamond problem. Let me just pop this up the screen quickly. Yeah, this is what you want to go look up. This is the problem which lots of programming has. This is what's called multiple inheritance, the deadly diamond of death, the diamond problem, and this is solved with mixins. So yes, the answer is yes, you can do it with Flutter and Dart, and the answer is that's what a mixin helps you do. So mixins are
it's made more solvable with mixins. It doesn't necessarily just solve them out of the box.
Yeah.
It just makes it easier to manage the layering.
And to be clear, mixins run in the order that they're declared, so that if you have multiple functions the same name, they're declared and run in that order, which gives you a definition of expression which solves the diamond problem, if you will, in terms of you know the definitive path it's going to follow and the order it's going to follow. But yeah, it's complicated. Mixins are exactly that, and you can go look at Dart language, the language guides, and you'll find that there's a whole section on mixins and how that all works. So yeah, there you go. Right. When are you going to upload all Flutter Vikings separate vids? That's what Majid just said. And this question might come up before that, or before Majid came on. But yeah, over the next few weeks and following weeks, so let's say 6 weeks, the interviews and the Flutter Vikings videos, the edited videos with all the high quality images and slides and all the rest of it are going to be pushed through there, and you'll see them on this very channel. So subscribe and you'll get those. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and you'll see them up there.
Any Dart ORMs for Postgres?
I don't think so.
No. So see, the thing is, what it actually returns is the same as what you do with the JSON. It's a map. So you get you get your string column name and then your data type and all of that. So you could just stuck it into two from JSON and use your current freezed JSON serializable. I know there's a multitude of packages that do serialization that you can just use with Postgres. So not even a problem. Obviously, if you're trying to use more of a CRUD approach, then you could easily make like a simple sort of layer on top to like store models and save models, and you could add a field called type, and then you could then just make a simple data store which just stores any object you like in Postgres and then retrieves it out. There's simple stuff, but no, I've not seen a particular ORM made. There is a couple. I know there is a few, but I've not used them.
The successor to More, I think, the one that works with SQLite, I think also works with Postgres because the syntax is pretty close. Yeah. I remember hearing that. I think More became something. I forget the name.
Yeah, I've forgotten the name as well.
Good marketing. Good marketing for us to both forget.
I'm gonna find it. It's gonna bug me otherwise.
Now we've driven you on a quest. I understand how that works.
Drift. It's called Drift.
Drift. There we go. That's familiar now. Yes, I think that works with Postgres, and SQLite have pretty much exactly the same syntax. They have to, because the one SQLite follows Postgres for interpreting the spec.
What's the
anyway?
Jasper. The guy who wrote Jasper, I think I can't remember his name. Killian. I think he did a ORM for Postgres, but I might be wrong. There's a few of these things kind of flying around that I'm sure you can find.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here it is. Stormberry. That was it. I found it. Hang on. Let me just bring this up on screen here. And here, Stormberry. It's very strong ORM coded generation, provide easy things for Postgres DBs. There you go. That's what that'd be my first recommendation, but it's still early days. It's 0.80. Yeah. So contribute to the community packages, and we'll get better code at the end of this.
Indeed.
Right, so moving on. Is the Skier engine used across all 6 platforms? How does Flutter make performance consistent on all of them? It is. It is used for the most part on all of them. Skier on web is a bit more complicated matter because it works with Canvas Kit. Yes, it does then use Skier under the hood. How does it make the performance consistent? With great difficulty. That's literally what the Flutter team, big thing that Flutter team do is essentially solving that problem of running and having a consistent rendering experience and platform and behavior across all of the platforms. This is their big mission. right? So how does he do that? That's how does the Flutter team do its thing?
And there are multiple things going on there, such as Simon mentioned, the Canvas kit using Skia. There's also the HTML renderer for web. And don't forget that the Flutter team had to redo a bunch of work in order to support Metal. So that getting that API up and running was also quite interesting from what I've heard. So
I was going to say briefly, that's how they. To answer the question, how does Flutter make performance consistent? They use benchmarking and lots of other things. When they produce a new build, it runs through a bunch of automated tests, and if something goes completely out of spec, then it'll alert them and they go in and fix it, right? But they get it wrong. There's some regressions. That's why we have hot patches on like the releases. I think like 5.3.1, 3.2, 3.31, 3.32. They had some reversions that they did on some things that had some performance problems in certain platforms, and that's what they're there to solve. Anyway,
and to reduce this answer down to 3 words, how does they make performance consistent? With great difficulty.
Why is a completer in Flutter? It's a future answer would be my simple explanation for that. It's a way of returning an answer that will be completed sometime in the future, and then that completer can be completed on by something asynchronous with an error or with an actual value.
So basically what you're saying is you have a question and the completer is the thing that's going to answer it, or you're looking for something. So when you say an answer, that's what people are going to think.
Yeah, I mean, a completer is a way of providing a future answer, an answer to a future. Yeah.
In other words, it's a response to a future.
Yeah, it actually has a method. Yeah. So a completer has a getter in it called future, and the idea is that you can return that, and later on you can complete that future asynchronously with an answer or an error. So your function returns immediately, and something asynchronous starts on in the future.
It's not something to worry about too much because in most coding, you end up with things creating features for you that you have to manage. So it's pretty rare to actually create a completer, but that can be used when you need that particular pattern.
Yeah, it's really handy actually. When you need it, you know what you need.
Yeah.
Dennis, welcome. Struggling to do end-to-end test of deployed Flutter web app. Welcome to the crowd. I can do Flutter integration tests, and that can be done during build, but test and deploy build can only be by using the semantic overlay. Yeah, testing on web is still not a completely solved problem, and it's known to have issues right now. And I think there's a whole section on the Flutter website around this. Yeah, sadly enough, it's just not.
How useful do you think it would be to develop your web on desktop and try to run your tests there? I realize it doesn't actually test the web app, but at least you're probably going to catch some problems.
I seem to remember seeing recently that there was particularly a web package for integration tests and extensions for web that they're working on. So this is a problem. I think it was in that master. Look at the master API docs. There's some packages in there. I think that's what I was looking through. I was looking through recently. They're working on it. It's the best I can say. I don't have an direct answer to you. And as Scott was just saying, try and do all your testing against desktop for the most part. But again, yes, it's not end to end. It's not running on the platform that you're actually going to be running on. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, and doing it on desktop, you'll probably catch well over half of the things you're looking to catch, maybe a lot more.
Right. Karlo, is there any repos list for Hacktoberfest? No, there's not a particular repo list. There'll be announcements on the Flutter community YouTube, not YouTube chat, on the Twitter account. That's where Majid's going to be doing some announcements around this, and that just keep subscribed there and you'll get notified. That's the best I can say right now. And it's not just for us, it's not just the community. There's a bunch of the normal Flutter repo. There's a bunch of stuff during October for Hacktober. Just Google it and see what comes up, right?
All right. How about Flutter with Kotlin? The question that just won't die.
No, but you can make Flutter apps and use Kotlin right now. That's how you do a normal plugin. What is the question is, are you trying to build Flutter apps using Kotlin as the language
instead of Dart? Yeah, and that's a question that's been roving around for 4 years. The first thing that people say about that is only if you want to give up hot reload.
Yep.
There is a couple of packages out there that do this. I think there's one for Rust right now, right? Flutter building Flutter apps with Rust. I remember seeing that recently. And there's a few things, but the problem is they have to duplicate the library. There's a bunch of stuff. It's not Flutter Rust with Flutter. I don't know. I have no idea. I remember seeing some stuff around it recently. And the problem here is it's just not like practical, because any change they make so if it's not officially supported, any change to the Flutter again now has to be remapped and either cross-compiled with Kotlin. It becomes really, really complicated. For what practical reason? Why?
And the thing is that I see this from a lot of Kotlin people. They just don't want to learn Dart, and it's like you could learn Dart in one day, or you could spend 6 months trying to figure out how to write Flutter apps in Kotlin. It would take you so much less time to just learn Dart.
It's not just that. Like, Dart fits in with so many other languages. If you know one of these other languages like Swift, Kotlin, whatever, you can pick up Dart. Just
C#.
Yeah. Right, moving on. Tyler,
what's your strategy when it comes to navigation and routing? Go router. How do you decide to make a widget?
So, hey mate, how do you decide to make a widget a material route object versus keeping it a raw widget? You always have to have a route object to push anything, even if it's on the using of Navigate 2 pages. Each page returns a route. There's always a route, but you never do that directly. Hang on, wait.
Sorry.
That wasn't me.
He's doing stuff. I'm trying to say. Yeah. So you always have raw widgets. There's never not a raw widget. So what I think you're asking here is that your top level of your widget should never be a route. A route is you only wrap your widget in a route when you want to navigate to it, because you pass that route off to the navigator for it to use that for the navigation process. So wrapping your material app in a route is not how you get to your home screen. Yeah, definitely don't do that. I've seen that actually done before. All right, so right, moving on. I think in short, go look up, go read up about the navigator widget on api.flutter.dev. There's a lot of great resources in the documentation there about that, and it might help explain it some more. We'll just experiment. Are we to see Flutter for 3D games? You can already do 3D games. I've shown it off. So yeah. Yes, you can use. In fact, there's a package called Flutter_GL, and you can go build 3D games with that in Dart and with Flutter. So go for it.
I see people still trying to ask questions. Please, we cut questions off quite a while ago. We had over 30 of them in the queue, and we had to call it if we're ever going to get
running over on our time. Is it a good idea to create REST API by using Flutter? Please suggest me any good package. What?
HTTP?
Is it a good idea to create a REST API by using Flutter? So with Dart, Flutter's the UI perspective on this, right? So I expect you mean with Dart, and yes, you can create a REST API with Dart, and you mean on the server side. So just use a shelf. It's called Shelf. Is the package you're looking for?
And also to break this down for anybody who's fairly new or didn't really get the basics a while back, in essence, Dart is the same as Swift or Java or Kotlin. Flutter is the same as your views, your lists, your buttons, the things you touch, the things you see, okay, and text styles and things like that. Android is the operating system and iOS is the operating system. Flutter is not an operating system. It is for creating UIs, and you use the language Dart to do that. And a lot of times you'll see people expecting Flutter to do things that is actually the job of the operating system, such as accessing the camera directly, accessing the IMU, GPS. No, that's the operating system's job. Flutter's job is to ask the operating system to check those things. So, and again, right here, REST API, you would be doing that in Dart, which basically means you could do it as an independent Dart console app without using Flutter at all. Simon, are you ready, or should I just keep talking?
I'm ready. Actually, so I just found the boring show full stack Dart parts that we did. It's a 3-part series on the boring show, and it covers this exact topic: how you build server-side Flutter apps using Shelf and stuff. So I'll chuck it in the chat, and I'm sure you can go rewatch that. And there's 3 parts. There are 3 hours of content for you to check out. And direction, but Shelf is the way to go. Right, Imad, any useful guide to work with other native technologies? C, Java, Swift, based on Flutter project as a big example. Python also. I just figured how, please. FFI, foreign function interface. There's a bunch
and that's
of
going to
stuff
be C++, right?
Oh no, it could be any of those. You can use Java, you can use Swift. Like there's you can use JNI to access Java. You can now access Swift and Objective-C directly and C. Yeah, basically any native language. And there's a whole section on here. I'll post the link here. C interrupt for Dart, which is how you do FFI. So there's the documentation in the chat. But yeah, that's what you're looking for. YY, what do you recommend practicing for becoming employable with backend on Flutter Dart?
I'm looking for it. Keep talking.
Yeah, you're looking. Yeah. Highly subjective roadmap. You should just put that link in the the link in the chat. Put the link in the chat. Anyway, right, moving on. What do you think about Dart Frog and Serverpod? Personally, not tried either. I looked at live streaming. They're using Dart Frog, which is has interoperability with Shelf. Sounds pretty good. Serverpod looked pretty good as well. Have you guys got any opinion on these two?
I'm glad people are doing it. I'm glad it's being developed forward. I'm glad there's layers on top of Shelf, so it'll keep that ecosystem at the bottom level, because I know the home team is supporting Shelf. So that means everything layering on that can probably interact with each other as well. But and Dart Frog is from VGV, our friends at VGV. So that's really cool.
Cool. I've got a couple of quick points just for a moment here. Yes, Flutter is like React. React was the concept so cool, Flutter stole it. But instead of reusing the components from the underlying OS and what we do instead, it's much better.
Yeah, cute.
Because we have control and ahead of time.
It's like it in the fact that we have reactive UI, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole general approach.
No. The way it does it under the hood, the way we do method chat, like the entire thing is different after that fact, really. Anyway, how do they do infinite zoom and infinite scroll in the history of everything app?
You know what?
Really well. They do it really well.
Yeah, and I had a talk with Philip at Flutter Vikings when he had first left Google and went back home to the Czech Republic. He didn't really have time to be a guest on the show, but I talked to him again at Flutter Vikings, and he does have time now. So Philip's the one who wrote that.
It's also open source, and here's the source code linked in the chat. There you go. So you can go look at the source code, and that'll tell you how they do it. But for the most part, slivers. So what you're looking for is the widget called a custom scroll view. And that allows you to put slivers in, and they can be infinite in length, right? It doesn't track it in the way that you have like a pixel offset. It's not like a standard scroll. And that's actually how Flutter all scrolling Flutter works on the hood. So I actually made a package called, I think, Infinite List View for that very purpose. You can make infinite lists. And
And it's interesting because if you put layout builders within layout builders, and then as you zoom, the layout builder checks what the new size is and creates the child within. It's just,
which can be,
just look at the code.
Yeah, it should also be a problem. So just be careful. Right. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
James Foreman, can you explain the reason we need to use const with a widget?
Well, first, you don't need to.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay. Yeah. No, you don't need, but every time you use const, what you're doing is you are making things run a little faster, because what happens is the values of your variables do not need to be calculated at runtime. They are fixed and set when you compile. That's the nice thing about const. Consts don't require a setter. Okay. They also are just there and able to be reused. It's kind of the same thing, whereas if you make a widget and you have it as a variable, you can just keep reusing that variable and it won't rerun the constructor.
So I've got a simple analogy real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick.
Go for it.
So when you write 2 + 3 in your source code, there's not like in a loop calculating 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 all the time. It takes 5 and drops that into the resulting executable. So that's the idea of a const. It can do some of the operations at compile time, and then you just have this thing that already exists.
And so that's the difference between writing int my5 equals 2 + 3 or const int my5 equals 5. Done.
That's one of the reasons why in your source code you can actually put things like padding is 10 + 5 + thing, and you can put a little comment next to each one, what each 15 or 5 means, and there's no less in terms of performance. That's no less than doing that than it is just to put the whole number in there that's added them all together, right? So you can break down your expressions any way you like. If they're constant expressions, then they get all run the same at compile time, and you won't lose any performance. Anyway,
so that's an interesting one though, because if you have one value that's a const and another value that's a const, so then you put it in the parameter as your one const plus your other const, that's also going to make that constant compile time, right? And then
not necessarily. No, not in an object sense, because it runs the plus operator, which is a method on your objects. But when they're literal variables, that literal values, that is your base. Yeah, it's your base type. So like integer, double, float.
See, and it would have been nice to be able to do that as a variable name, because then, of course, clean code, descriptive, et cetera, et cetera.
But there are certain things. So if you pass a const to another constructor that's a const, it's done at compile time. So you can get around that by making a dot plus constructor that takes the result of one and adds it to the other, and that also works. So, yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Well,
how to override back button press? Don't. Never.
Like if I want to have an alert confirmation before navigation pop-up. So you can do this. So let me give an example. Let's say you're editing a form. There's a good example of when this is definitely used, and that is you're editing a form, and you start, or let's say there's an edit of an object or something, you start editing the fields, and then you hit back. You want to pop up saying to the user saying, you're leaving the screen. Are you sure you want to discard your changes? That's a perfectly reasonable use of overriding the back button. But what is not a good use is when you have like a loading pop-up and then they're stuck there. They can't get out of your app. They can't do anything because they're stuck on this loading screen. You always need an onward journey when you hit the back button, right? That's your first thing for UX.
Okay.
The answer to this is called will pop scope, and it's a widget that you can dig up from the repository. Go on.
Will pop scope, and this is the one time I really would agree with Chris Sells on using GoRouter.go instead of GoRouter.push. GoRouter.go allows you to replace the stack instead of just pushing something onto it. Now, this is important because let's say you go to this page that you're talking about. When you go to the stack, or when you use go out or go, you put 2 items on the stack. You put your question of, do you want to leave this page first? Then you put the other page on there. So you're not overriding the back button. You hit back, it pops the stack exactly as designed, and there's your pop-up.
So yeah, this is the widget will pop scope that you want to put in. You put this inside your widget hierarchy, somewhere inside your widget hierarchy, inside the route, somewhere inside the route that you're trying to stop from being popped. And then in your callback, it's a double negative, I'm afraid. So you return a false to be true and true to be false. It's complicated, and it has to be a future. You'll learn. I'm sure there's examples out there. Have fun. Right.
You learn by it going wrong. So when you're beating
if it doesn't
your
work
head
one
against
way,
the desk, you're learning.
Yeah. If it doesn't work one way, it'll work the other way. It's only a Boolean. Right. How to make
it's a Boolean, right? It's got to be.
How to, you can just do this. Literally what you just explained, how to make a file contain common imports in the app. What you do,
export.
You make one, that's it. You make one Dart file that has export and then all of your things that you're trying to do. That exports them from that Dart file, and they just include that one Dart file everywhere. And that's a very common pattern that we use in all the software development.
Just look up using exports, and it'll all make sense.
It's often called barrel files, so you can look up barrel extensions in both the Android and Visual Studio Code to be able to create those somewhat automatically.
I seem to remember that there was a there was a page on this on Dart in somewhere in the Dart language tool, I'm sure.
Like maybe talking about export. I think it was on the export
page. There you go. Yeah. We got conditionally exporting. Anyway.
Oh no.
It's because they're the same as imports, right? In fact, there's an example here of exactly organizing your library package. Let me just pop this up and give this in the chat here. We'll move on. So yeah, there's a section here called organizing a library package, which is exactly what you're talking about. Here's your thing. Here's what we're just talking about. You do export, and you can export whatever you want. You don't have to have show. It exports everything, and then you can just import that one file, right? So that's the example, and here it is here. So, and it's still about packages, but it's the same for if it's your own thing. And you can just do conditional exports and various fun things. It gets really complicated. Have fun. Right, moving on. Tyler, what is your navigation strategy? When and where do you place your material routes? I think this is kind of covering the question you covered before.
I look for the North Star.
Yes.
When I want to navigate.
I use Google Maps on my phone.
In the morning, keep the sun on your right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the answer to what I'd say is, if you go look at my navigation tool in Flutter Europe, you'll see what I do there. I create a static method at the top of each of my sort of top level widgets called route. And then I would then say push this whatever widget dot route, and then it will create the material route there. It gives you single principle as well, because the handling of that screen happens within that screen. It's quite a simple pattern and works quite well. Quite a few people have picked it up. So go look up my navigation talk at Flutter Europe. It's on YouTube. Right, there you go. Is it possible to use the spread operator in the constructor with Dart? Can I see similar thread here? But I could find.
If it's const, yeah.
Well,
you can have a const spread.
No. Well, no, you can. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's const. You can still use a spread operator. I think that the point here is how are you trying to use the spread operator? Because yes, you can. You're saying, is it possible? Just type it in. You'll see if it's possible. But yes, you can.
Yeah.
What you're doing is, I think the difference here is the spread operator for it. Let me just explain it. It takes whatever's in a list and expands it into another list, right? So the idea is that you can put multiple things together into one outside list. You can do that, but then what would that have to do with constructors, right? Like, if you have an object that takes a list, then you can. I think the problem here is that there's several languages that use spread operators in the different ways that you cannot do in Dart. So there might be some. If you're talking about the language here, there might be a problem. Yeah.
Well, and the way I'm reading this is, forget about the spread operator. It's how do I perform logic, something like using a spread operator in the constructor. And of course, that would be like doing an assert or an assignment to a private variable after the colon. You could also do this.
you can just do curly braces and stick it in the function, right? Or you can put it in the parameter. Like, there's a bunch of ways to do this, and the problem is that the question is not specific enough. So maybe you can give an example next time.
Next time.
Have you tried Dockerizing Flutter for development? Yes. In fact, there's all the stuff. In fact, we show it on those boring show that I just talked about. Oh, for development. Sorry. Let me just read this again. Have you tried Dockerizing Flutter for development, as in having a Docker image that you run to start your development environment up? No, I have not tried that. Although there should be no reason why you can't do that. You could have your entire development environment inside a Docker container.
And what's to say, taking that another step further, put it on a VM.
Yeah.
GCP.
So, I mean, this is it, right? So a lot of the time, if you're working on a project where you have lots of developers, what you want is what's called a development environment that you can just check out, right? So that's a good example of that Docker. So you can just like check something out, you run the Docker container, and you can just instantly debug and develop and work with the project, right? Without having to install any third parties, configure anything, stuff like that.
Right.
You know what? This is fantastic for workshops, come to think of it, because number one, the biggest problem people have when dealing with Flutter a lot of times is installing. Yeah. And if it's on a VM, you'll never have to do that again.
Yeah, sure. But there's a great example for that, which is Zap. Zap also solves that problem. So if you just as a little promotion for Zap, here's Zap. Zap is an online sandbox for rapidly prototype application. Basically, this is it right here. In fact, this is it running in a widget.
So what's the difference between this and Dartpad running an emulator?
You actually have imports. So you actually have PubSpec. Yeah, okay. Look, like it's a whole development suite.
He said the magic word for the dog.
I muted Scott. Sorry. So there's a whole development suite that you can get to, tabs and everything.
Wow.
It's on Zap. So check out zapp.run. Yeah, that's enough promotion for them, right? Maybe not. What's next? Will there be a dedicated Flutter package for Google Optimizations AI, Cloud Fleet Routing API? Is there Java and Python? But how? There is a Java and Python and how to use it in Flutter. So what you're asking for is you can use that. Let's say what's your target? So here's the problem we have with a lot of these questions is now you can target multiple platforms. Are you talking about an Android app? Are you talking about a desktop app? Like the answer is different, right? But in short, there's guides on flutter.dev for building packages. So if you go to I'll bring this up on the stream again. If you go to flutter.dev, click on docs. Over here, you've got packages and plugins and developing packages and plugins. And this gives you basically how you create a plugin, you're developing plugins, and then how you don't have to do federated plugins, but how you can use the existing template for a plugin, develop it for Android. You can add your Java package to it and make a method channel. There's a whole bit in here about method channels. I'm sure I can't remember where it is. I don't know. I can't remember. There's a whole. Does anyone remember? I always forget the names of these screens. Anyway,
this is why one of the first things Simon taught me 4 years ago was that if you have your IDE open on one screen and you don't have the docs open in another, you're doing it wrong.
So this is what you're looking for. It's platform integration, writing platform-specific code, and this shows you how it all works. So you have your Flutter app, method channels, and your iOS or third-party SDK or whatever. And this talks about how that all works. And then, in fact, this is a good example in here of how you build that yourself. And you can see here custom Dart code, and then there'll be the Java code for that, and or Kotlin code or whatever, and Swift and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I'll pop that in the channel for you. There's also just to answer this question. Oh wait, the question's gone. I lost the question.
Sorry about that. It was so big it was blocking what you were trying to show.
What was the question? Wow. Damn, it was Java. There was a particular point I was trying to make. No, we lost it.
Sorry, I was tending to a dog.
Yes.
Oh, there was a second part to that. It was really interesting. I know there was. No, I can't find it.
Tune in next with the conclusion to this question.
Oh. Yeah, right. Ask again next week and maybe get some more. Debugging on desktop is faster than web. Yes. There you go. Yes, completely. Because you're not so anything on web is going to be slower than anything else because there's more layers, right? Like web has got to be go through HTML, Java, a bunch of other layers to get to the end result, which is exactly what a desktop app is, right? It's your end result showing what you want on the screen, doing what you want. Without the intermediate layers, it's going to be quicker, right? So debugging is going to be quicker.
Okay, guys, take the bottom. Not yet. Not that one yet. Is that what you wanted back?
Yes, it was. Yes. Google optimization AI. So I was going to mention that there is a, if you go to pub.dev, I'll show you here. Oops. If you go pub.dev, there's a Google APIs. It's called Google APIs. That way, of course, and there's also Google APIs, and this has a bunch of APIs that it supports. I don't know if one of these is that. What was it called? Cloud Fleet. Cloud Fleet. If it's not here on this one, there's also the beta one. And so if it has, if it's not included on these, you can actually make a request on the repositories to have it included. So I don't see it on there, but if you go to the GitHub repos for these, they can include the Google API for the optimization AI Cloudflare routing API, and then it will be added to here, which will give you a Dart interface. But you still need to build out your plugin from that. So yeah.
Okay. Now this one, we can't give custom font weight in Flutter. Like if I want W500 or W350, actually, yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Okay, well, I'm sitting here. Okay, W500
no.
now. If you want to create a custom one,
no, you can't.
But when people are talking about, hang on, because it's saying W500. W500 is a stock one right there. Yes, are they saying that they don't know how to change the W numbers, or they want to make one like 615?
350 doesn't exist, right? If you scroll up 350, it goes up in hundreds, right?
Right.
Some fonts have the weight is actually an arbitrary number, and font weight inside Flutter is a fixed number. However, you can still use them, right? And the trick to using them, let me just go back to the screen here. The trick to using them is inside of your PubSpec YAML, we declare the fonts. You can use 400, right, for 350, and just include the 350 font object, the TTF file for 350. Tell Flutter it's 400, and then when you want to use it, use 400, right? Like it doesn't care. The weight is just a way of saying what font file to use for what font that you specify. That's all it is. The weight number in itself is just a reference. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't just because it's. I'm going to lie on that and say it's 700 is a very special deal for bold, but yeah, apart from that, none of the others make a difference.
And for variable weight fonts, there is a way to get to it with font style somehow. We talked about that like 4 weeks ago.
Honestly, look at the previous hump days. We actually went through this question, answered it there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I installed Flutter WebView, the WebView Flutter package. My Gradle build has refused to run. You don't have to install that package for Gradle to refuse to run.
Yeah,
it's Gradle.
What you've found is that the WebView, what you found is the WebView Flutter package depends on some Gradle, some native Android platform features that either your app depends on conflicting packages probably, or some other dependency you have. And this is just the nature of having multiple Android packages, and you have to solve that. And you're saying refuse to run. It doesn't just magically refuse to run, like it will give you an error, and then that will tell you
there's a reason
an
somewhere.
indication of what to run. But what you're looking for, the problem you're looking for at the moment, you're probably Googling wrong, and that is it's nothing to do with Flutter, right? What you're experiencing is an Android related issue, right? So you want to be Googling for Android Gradle, whatever the issue is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be talking about Flutter because you're not going to get the answer you probably want.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see here. How do we handle Flutter errors when the stack trace is not very specific about the problem? You're not being very specific about the problem.
The answer is to stick breakpoints in, and to the problem here is that the stack trace should be your last. I mean, it very much is like the first point of call, right? Because you get this lovely stack trace, it tells you where the issue is. But to be honest, if a problem occurs, you should have some inclination of where in your code that's happening because you wrote the code, right? So you can start putting in either produce breakpoints or print statements or other debugging things to determine that. But honestly, running your code in debug means that when an error occurs, it will break and on the line that the error occurred on. So it doesn't matter about the stack trace, right? So I would say if you're not already running your app in debug, right, run in debug mode and make sure you haven't turned off breakpoints inside your IDE. And then what will happen is there's actually a break on all Dart and Flutter errors.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's a setting that you have to change in order to get it to stop on all of them. And also, Simon kind of blew by this one about print statements. Everyone says they're a terrible thing to do, and everyone uses them when no one is looking. So
it's not that. It's the fact that the reason why print statements is a thing that happens in Flutter is because of hot reload, right? So you do print to print out the specific things that you want and hit run, and you see them right over time. So what you've made is a chart over time, right? Which is great. This is very helpful, right? Depending on your debug scenario. And because of hot reload, you can just change it, and then you hit the button again. You can see all different things. It's very easy, but for the most part, you can get a better expression of what your sort of better idea about the entire state of your application by putting a breakpoint in. When it hits that breakpoint, your entire app is paused, and you go look at any variable and any stack trace and go look at anything inside your app and see what its state is to understand what the problem is.
And a developer tip, I have stopped using print. I'm using log all the time now, and it's so much nicer because it stamps it differently and it has the full width, doesn't truncate at some arbitrary cutoff like print does. Very nice. Log. It's in developer package. You have to pull that.
And if you insist on using print, use debug print.
Yep.
There's actually, you can also there's several different logging applications out there. What was it called? Fimba, right? Fimba was another one. So if you've not used this, Randall, I've surprised you. This is great. So let me just,
I'm surprised. This is me with my surprised emoji on. Yes.
So there's a package
for
there's a package for Android logging called Timber, which is very, very popular. This is Timber by Jake Wharton. And then someone's come along and made Fimba, which is essentially the same thing. You include Fimba, you can plant a debug tree and all the rest of it, and you have the same thing. It's like you have print statements and various other things, but it gives you a bunch of extra formatting and nice things that you can do. So you could just do like the standard, like very much like what you're doing, like log.d, log.i, and it just handles all those extra parameters for you, Randall. So you don't use the raw log.
And the core logger can also be pulled in and used as well. But just simply when you're debugging, you just want to get a quick trace of something, just add log, and then my IDE adds the developer package, and I'm done.
So you've got we're talking about Logger. This is the fundamental underlying logging package, which can help. You can get these lovely like log stuff happening, and there's logging as well, which gives you some extensions on that as well. But both are in there, and they're both fundamental packages. If you want, moving on.
And one other quick thing on that, it's really cool. Everybody should go on Twitter and mention Jake Wharton, asking him for his thanking him for his contribution to Flutter. Don't do that. Really, don't do that.
Let's get these last questions.
Sorry. Who's driving?
What DevOps workflows do you use? CI/CD processes, code magic? ? I mean,
whatever the client asks for.
4 ways to do it. App Circle, Bitrise, Code Magic is what a lot of folks use. Once it's set up, it's really good. Kind of hard to set up, but once you get there, and then you can beat yourself to death and do your own thing in-house.
You can also do and the other thing is you've got Fastlane, you've got all those things still work. Anything you just do in Android and iOS development, you can still use with Flutter, right? There's no difference. So the point of CI/CD, at the CI level, that's all Flutter specifics, running Flutter test and various integrations things, right? Which you can run on any Docker-based service, right? Like all GitHub Actions, CodeMagic, whatever. There's multiple platforms for that. And then again, deployment. You've got Fastlane, you've got other deployment mechanisms, or you can just use the APIs for the different app stores. But CodeMagic is a nice one because it's they've done all that for you. They've done all that hard work. You put in, you fill out the form, you use the CodeMagic YAML file, and that's it. You're off and running. It's all doing things. You fill out the boxes, you sign into your Play Store and your Apple App Store and whatever else, and then. But once it's configured, what I mean trying to say is like it's simple running, right? There's not a lot more to do, and there's the problem with CICD, and it's not a problem in itself. But the problem that you're going to experience is the fact that the idea is it's very configurable because everyone has a different way of doing things, which makes it very hard to kind of learn what is the way I should be doing because there is no answer to that, right? It's however what works for you, what you're trying to do, and that comes with practice. So it's one of those difficult things. There's lots of good articles though on CodeMagic's blog and various other places around there.
And that's basically the way I look at it. If you want just something very simple and quick CI/CD that's just good for a lot of common cases, I would use App Circle. It's basically just drop in and go. But if you're a power user and you want to be able to configure a lot of things, App Circle allows you to configure a number of things. But if you really want to dig in, CodeMagic is the way to go.
I mean, CodeMagic, you say that, but CodeMagic's dropping work. I mean, it really has got.
I know they've been working on making it easier.
You probably haven't used it. It's really easy. Yeah. Anyway, right. But there's a ton of options, right? So yeah, whatever works for you. I don't know if there's any particular workflow I could suggest.
Okay. And how to use an infrared scanner with Flutter. The infrared scanner is another hardware thing that ties into the OS, like I was saying before.
No, not exactly.
Well,
hang on.
But Flutter is the UI for your scanner.
Yeah, I mean, right, but also I would read this as /Dart, right? Whenever I see Flutter, it's always /Dart. How use an infrared scanner with Dart?
But your platform channel.
Right, no, but infrared scanner, as in what? I mean, I don't know what that is, right? First of all, like, does he mean like a 3D scanner? What is he talking about? What is an infrared scanner? Like a barcode scanner? And like what? Like, is there a mistake?
Yeah.
So, but a lot of these, a lot of hardware has ways of interfacing, and you can, as I've shown with my e-ink stuff, you can communicate with hardware directly from Dart, right? But the end of the day it's about how your infrared scanner asks for it to be done, right? It should come with its own SDK or library or something like that. So, there is
there's another interesting thought here. Does your scanner actually have an operating system on it that you would be putting the Flutter app on, or is your scanner something that plugs into like USB and you're trying to write a Flutter app for it on desktop?
So we could actually talk about this in quite a bit more detail. In fact, show it. So if you can send us an email, it's us@fluttercommunity.dev. We could explore this in more opportunity, in more detail, and talk about how you do these and these advanced things. We've shown some code examples of how you might communicate with a custom piece of hardware using Flutter and Dart, and what this whole process of making plugins. We could do a whole stream on that. So yeah, email us at Flutter Community with the details, and maybe we can expand upon that.
Okay, and we've basically quit questions a while back, but there is one I want to show real quick. To contribute to Flutter, the fastest way to get started, everybody always says, fork it, find something in the docs that you think could be explained better. Make those changes, push a PR. Because honestly, the majority of things that they can use for the repo are people figuring out other ways to phrase things in the docs that might be a little bit more understandable. They have done so much of that now that the vast majority of docs are fantastic, but you would really be surprised. There's probably, I think, still more documentation contributions going on than anything else.
Like a future builder, which we didn't get to in this show. No.
Yeah. So next week we'll get to that. I do just want to bring this up quickly. Garata 5 even makes web reload twice I guess, very slow when debugging. I've not experienced any problems with Go Runtime on web, and maybe this is the new release and they've got some bugs have been introduced. Hopefully not, but just check your app, right? Because there's like this whole reload thing. Like mostly, if there's a lot of times people make problems, and this actually kind of goes back to what Randall was just saying about Future Builder. Like there's a lot of mistakes that you can make that will cause your entire app to feel like it restarts or refresh the entire layout, and you can get into several problems there. And they somewhere along your hierarchy of widgets, you've got probably some asynchronous problem, and it's causing it to, when you navigate, reload and cause things to mess up within your application. These are just bugs in apps in general. This is not specific to Go Router. This is Go Router as the navigator. I reckon if you were to switch Go Router out for standard navigator, you'll probably find you still have the same problem, and it's completely unrelated to Go Router, because Go Router, I can't see them making anything slow. It doesn't function like that, right? Like there's nothing in there that's asynchronous. It doesn't load anything. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a big bugs in anything, and I don't know the details, but I highly doubt that that's where your problem is. Right. Sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, when you whoops,
go on.
Randall, what'd you do to me?
I didn't do anything.
So when you go to submit a PR, there are instructions.
Yeah.
Just read them and follow them.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Yep. And what we're just talking about is what Randall just posted in the chat is common Future Builder stream builder problem that we wanted to cover at this stream. We didn't get to it, but go check out the video that Randall produced. Me and Randall had a good discussion around that before he made that. It's so common for people to have this problem where they either forget to put the initial data or they rebuild the future / stream on every single time build is executed, and it causes so many problems. It's we are actually thinking about submitting a PR ourselves to try and fix this, but that's a discussion for another time. Right.
Yeah, next week.
I think
finally
that's it. I think we're there. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us. And
we have survived.
We survived another week, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.